Hey everybody, back again. Today I'm doing a power steering fluid change. Not a flush, not a fill, but a complete fluid system change. I've looked at a lot of videos online and there's really no complete change of fluid in the system that you can find online. They show some videos about using a turkey baster to remove fluid from inside the reservoir and filling it back up again, but that's not a fluid change. Your entire system is still full of fluid. Um, Others use a suction machine to get the fluid out of the container, still not a complete change. So I figured I would just do something on my own, make up my own deal, and put it online, let everybody use that as a reference. I just did this yesterday on my other vehicle, a 2002 Hyundai Elantra. The vehicle I'm going to do it on today is a 2000 Ford Explorer Sport. Now, this really will work on almost any vehicle that you have with the power steering system that is really standard today. What I did was I just created my own system to evacuate the old fluid and basically refill it with fresh fluid and flush it out completely, all in one process. It's really the only way to do it. Now the materials that I used you can pick up at a hardware store, the big orange box store. But basically what I got was I got 10 feet of clear vinyl hose. It's a half-inch. See if I can get this in focus for you here. It's a half-inch outside diameter, or OD, by 3/8 ID, which is inside diameter. 10 feet of that, and just cut it in half. I also got a 3/8 by 1/4 inch male adapter barb by male adapter, which is this here. I also got a 3/8 ID hose barb, which is this one here, and two hose clamps. You'll also need an empty container to put the old fluid in, whether it's an oil pan or just an empty oil container. A cup, some small cup or container. Funnels. I also have a pair of needle nose pliers, a screwdriver with the socket. You're also going to need a half-inch drill bit and a drill, socket wrench, a hot glue gun. You're also going to need 2 gallons of power steering fluid, just to be on the safe side, just because you don't want to be in the middle of it and not have enough and then run out. You're also going to need paper towels, obviously. It can be messy. And the video will cut in and out, but I promise you I am not going to skip any steps. You'll see everything that I do and that I've done. I will start with the prep by putting this system together to actually change the fluid, and then I'll move on to putting the system on my system on the vehicle to actually change the fluid, and we'll go from there. So the first thing you want to do is look at your power steering system and check your lines and the diameters of your hose lines in the system itself. Now you need to find your in and out on your power steering system. Your hydraulic system in your power steering is a circular system. It's one line goes in, one line goes out. Now the line that connects directly to your power steering pump is your line in. Now you can see down here, if I can get this light set up just right so you can see it, you can see that line right there that's coming out of the bottom of your reservoir. That goes directly into the pump. It's kind of hard to see. See if I can get a better angle here. There you go. So you can see that line goes directly into the pump. Then your second line is coming from the very bottom of the system, which is coming from underneath. It goes all the way down to the bottom of the motor, down to the rack and pinion, which is where your wheels are connected and everything turns. This line here, coming from the rack and pinion, is your line in. The fluid goes into the reservoir from that line. Your line that goes directly from the reservoir to the pump is your line out. So it goes out of the reservoir into the pump, down to your rack and pinion, then back up into the reservoir. So that's your in and out. It's very important that you get everything connected in the correct order, otherwise this will not work. You need to have in and out in the correct order. So once you find that out, maybe you can refer to the owner's manual on your particular vehicle. You may be able to do it by sight. There are usually different size lines. The line going into your pump, which feeds the system, is larger than the line coming back in to your reservoir or out of the system. That's why I have two different size connections with my vinyl hose. The larger tip here is going to be the feed going into the pump. This barb here that is 3/8 on both sides is the line out, which is where everything will evacuate the system. You need two different sizes in order to fit the two different size lines on your system. So with that being said, I will go on to the next one, or the next step, and we'll go from there. Okay, first thing that we need to do is cut the line in half, the vinyl hose that you have. You want to cut that in half and basically just insert the barb on one end all the way in until it's seated. The other end just leave open, and I just put it in one slot just to keep it closed and together. The other end also put completely in, and let me move this around. It's kind of dark over there. Let me turn this the other way, see if this will be better. Make it easier to see. Now I know I'm not doing a whole big professional setup here, but I don't care about being professional when functionality is a priority, so I am just going to do the best I can with what I got here. Yeah, I think that's better. The light's pretty harsh. Okay. So I got my connections on the hose. Put the barb in on one end with the hose cut in half. And then just close that up. Have the other barb in the other end with the threaded part exposed. Now the two open ends on these lines are going to go into the existing lines on your power steering system. So once these are cut and put in, then that's done. The next step is to get 1 of your gallons of power steering fluid, and basically what you're going to do is you're going to create a supply for the power steering change. So what I did was I took the 1 gallon container. Like I said, I did this yesterday, so this has already been done. But basically what you want to do is take the lid and your 1/2-inch drill bit and just drill a hole into the top of through the lid. Just go all right through, and don't do this with the drill and open the hole up. You want to keep it as tight as possible. So just make the hole and then leave it. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to take the line that has a double barbed end, this one here, that has the 2 barbs, not the one with the threads. but the one with the 2 barbs. And you're going to basically just put the hose through the lid. Let me clean this off. Clean this up a little bit here. So what you're going to do is just stick this hose through here. And you want it to be this tight because you want this sealed. You don't want this to leak. And you'll see why in a minute. Now I've got that through, and just leave just a little bit out. Doesn't have to be a lot. So once that's done, then I'm going to take my hot glue gun. See if this thing's ready. I've had it plugged in. Yeah, it's ready. Now what I'm going to do is just take the hot glue gun and just glue around the hose and the lid, basically where it's gone through, and just dump a bunch of glue on there, because basically what you're doing is just sealing this shut so it doesn't leak. So once you get that done, just put some glue on there and fill it up. And this is the quickest way to do this that I can think of. So that's what I did, and it worked. It worked awesome. So once that's done, just let it cool. And just let that cool off, and you can see that I've just got the let's see if I can zoom in on that a little bit. No, it's not working out so well. There you go. And that'll seal it up. Okay, and you don't want to move this around too much until that glue sets. So you just want to leave that and let it set up. Now with the gallon, now while this is cooling off, with your gallon of power steering fluid, what I did was, in the top here, in the handle, directly above the spout, what I did was I just poked a small hole in here just as a vent. And just use whatever you got. You know, a needle, a knife, whatever, just a tip. Just a very small hole, just enough to let some air back into the can. Because you don't want to create a vacuum in there when you're trying to pull fluid out of the can. Because basically what's going to happen is you're going to screw this, where you attach the hose through it, back onto your container. And it's easier to turn the container than to try and turn the hose. And get that on nice and tight. Then you have your supply, and that's ready to go. Now, once that's done, you're going to move on to disconnecting the existing lines and draining the reservoir with the fluid that's in it now. So we will move on to that, which is down here. There she is. Now, like I said, the larger line is going to go into your pump. Smaller line is your evacuation. Okay, one correction. I said earlier to connect the double barb line to the gallon of power steering fluid. You need to connect the line with the threaded end to the power steering container of fluid that you supply. That's going to go into the larger hose on your vehicle. The smaller line is to get the old fluid out. So from there, we're going to remove the old lines and get ready to change the fluid. Now, the first thing you want to do is remove the screws that are holding on the reservoir. screws aside. On that. Now your container is loose. And then with your needle nose pliers, you're going to remove the hose. Either one, whichever one's easiest to do. Now this is kind of tight. I mean, the hoses are in here. They're pretty tight. And that's sitting down on this bracket. So it's loose, but it's still in there kind of tight. So however you want it to get the fluid out is totally up to you. It's going to be a mess. I just put paper towels underneath to catch the fluid that's going to be draining. Because as soon as you disconnect the hose, it is going to start running out. If you leave the cap on and tight, it'll slow it down because there's no way for the air to get through and just start running out of the system. So what you can do is just take some paper towels and just shove them underneath, just as a barrier, just to catch the fluid. So you can see the clamp here. Just try and get that pinched in pliers. Yeah, I'm going to need 2 hands for this, I think. Alright, I'm going to set this down and then do this with both hands. So now you can see that I've got the that clamp is pushed down. I removed it and pushed it down below. Where it was actually connected up by the container. Put this light back up. Now what I'm going to do with my little cup that I have here, I'm going to try and get this underneath there and get it down underneath, so when I pull this hose off I can just put my cup underneath it and catch the fluid. So just start to pry this down. Alright, I got that loose. My container's now loose. It was just held in with a little, looks like a little button there. See if you can see it there. You see a little hole there where it was just seated in there. So I've got that broken loose, which will give me a little bit more play with the hose in the container. Let's try and get this hose pulled off.
Now I know it seems like I'm taking a lot of time to do this, but I don't want to break the plastic connection that the hose is connected to. Breaking that, and then you got to buy a new reservoir, and it's an expense you don't want if you can avoid it. Alright. Now you can see it's, bring this over here, you can see I've got it pushed down. It's just about ready to come off. So as soon as that lets go, it is going to start draining the fluid. I don't know how well you can see that. So let me put this light over here. With my cup, and you can see I'm going to finish popping this off. And then go right there. There we go. Yeah, fluid is very, very, very black. And it should not be. Now I'm going to loosen the lid, and that'll let it run free. Okay, so I got the first cup drained. You can see how black this is. Just not very good. Looks like motor oil. It's so gross. It will really affect your system, which is what you don't want. That is not what it should look like at all. So there's one cup. Then I'll just go back and do it again. The same thing, just get underneath it here with the cup and the drain and let it go in. Take the lid off and let it finish draining. Get as much of it out of there as you can before you move on to the next one, because this will help. Now with the exposed line that you have off, I just take a paper towel, and just twist it up and just stick it down in the rubber hose, and that will slow down fluid coming out. So now the reservoir is pretty much empty for the most part. I mean, you're still going to get a mess no matter what, because it likes to run everywhere no matter what you do with it. So now I've got the second. Now this one was only another half a cup, so it wasn't, too much. This doesn't hold very much, really. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Just put my paper towel up in the end of it there. Oh, it's too much. It's not going to fit. Just a little bit, just enough to help catch the drippies. As soon as it gets wet, it's going to expand a little bit in there, and that's fine. So now that's off. There's that little piece that was holding onto the bottom of the, it's a little cushion there holding onto the bottom of the reservoir. Now I can move to taking off the other hose. And that looks like it's clamped underneath. Now if you want to, it looks like this clamp will come off the bracket. It actually holds on. It's actually holding the reservoir on. Take this off and get it out of the way. There's one screw. And the second one. And that's fine. You're not going to need this right now anyway. Out of the way is better. And give you a little bit more movement with this. So now we can see, move this camera again over here to this side again. See if I can get this thing back in the same spot. Light up here. Okay, so you can see I've got the second one. There we go. You can see the clamp on the second line down there. So I'm going to do the same thing with needle nose pliers. Just pinch this shut, push it to the back, just to get it off of the hose there. And you can leave these on the hose, they're not going to be in the way. But you do want to make sure you get it back far enough that you can get the hose off. You can see these plastic leads here are pretty long. A good 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches. Okay. Get this thing off of here. Now, of course, our great American Ford dealer is making this as difficult as possible to get off of here by making it as tight as possible. So let me get a screwdriver here I can push with. There it goes. Once that old seal breaks, then you just flip this up. Stop everything from running out. Now you've got that off, you can see fluid is still running out of here. If you just pick it up, it'll stop running out. And take your paper towel, and again, just stick it in there, catch all the drippies. And then you can remove this paper towel. A lot of fluid on there. This paper towel, again, a lot of fluid. Get that pulled out of there. Then any mess you got down there on all your stuff, start cleaning it up. Wipe it up as best as you can. It's going to be all over the place. Now, if you want to take the little suction cup deal with the turkey baster and drain the container, that's fine too. I don't have one of those, so this is how I did it, and it works fine for me. I mean, I'm sure it'll make it stink later, but brake cleaner will clean this up, dissolve it, and get it out of here. The lines are pretty much empty now. Really what you have left is just what's in the system. There's really nothing else coming out of the lines at this point. You can see the lines are pretty much empty here and here. There's nothing coming out. So you can see there's a difference in diameter in these two lines. This one I can get my finger in, this one I cannot. So there are two different size lines. This one is going directly to the pump. That's your feed in. That's what sucks the fluid into the system. This smaller line here is the one coming out of the system where it goes back into the reservoir. So that's why you have two different lines or sized connections on your clear plastic lines. Now, depending on how this fits, you want the barbed end to go into your small one. It should slide right in there because that's standard size, so it just pushes right in. Okay, and it will come right back out the same way as the plastic ones. Now what I do, just for safety's sake, just to stop the mess, I put a hose clamp on there. One of the hose clamps, I put this on here and then put my barb in. And then I will just clamp that down. Okay, so I finished clamping this down. It doesn't have to be super tight. The system's not under a tremendous amount of pressure, just to keep it from leaking when you start it up and change the fluid out. So I've got that clamped on, and that's the barb to barb. Now, that's the smaller line. Now the bigger line is going to take your other hose, the hose that you actually have connected to your supply of power steering fluid. So you just pull that, so you can see here I've got the threaded end, which is larger than the barb itself, and this is actually going to be your supply into your system. So what you want to do is just get this over here as close as you can, and then bring this down to connect it to the other line, which is actually going to feed into the pump itself. I've got a little bit of fluid coming out of there again. I'll light this up real quick. That's okay, it's not a big deal. Now again, I'm going to put another hose clamp on here, and you'll want to take a look. First, you just want to see how this is going to fit into here. So you can see it's loose. It slides right in. This is a much bigger diameter size hose. So we need to get a clamp and clamp that down. And I've got one that's a bigger size here. This one is a bigger size than what I showed originally. Now on the Hyundai, this size worked on both ends. Obviously this is a bigger hose, so we're going to need a larger clamp. But the function is the same. So let me get this on here. Get this threaded down here a little bit. So now get this on here and then get this line and just put the threads in to the end. And then just get this tight initially. Don't go super tight just yet. And you'll see why in a minute. And I just started that. It's not super tight. I can still take this line out. Just want to get it just snug for now. Yeah, it's getting tight now. A little bit too much. Loosen this up a little bit. I want to be able to feed that in there. So it's still loose. Now it'll just take a couple of turns to get that tight. Now the reason why I'm doing this is because what's going to happen is you can see that this line right now is still full of air. Now what's going to happen is when I turn this bucket over and the fluid starts to run through, it'll start to run out. Gravity will take over. And leaving that line loose will allow the fluid to push the air out of the line. So you can see the bubbles running through it. And that's what you want to happen. You want this fluid to run through here and push these air bubbles out as much as possible. So now the fluid's going to start running through there. You can see the air running out. Okay. And if it doesn't want to go quietly on its own, you can give a little incentive. Plug your hole with your thumb and force the fluid through. And it will start to fill your system up with new fluid. And when it runs out, as soon as it starts to run out, tighten that clamp up. Okay. So there. Now once that's tight, it'll seal that line. Now if there's, and you can see, as I push, let's see if you can get a good picture here of this. Now you can see what's going on here. You can see my evacuation line. Let me move this lamp. Okay, now you can see, now that I've got this hooked up here, with the new fluid coming in, move this lamp here, you can see. Now you can see, I've got the new line coming in here, and feeding in to the supply. Now you can see my evacuation line. See that dark fluid coming up? Now you'll see, as I push, if I plug the hole here, and squeeze this bottle, set this camera down. Now I'm plugging this hole and squeezing the bottle. You'll see that black fluid start to move through the line. See it moving up? Because I'm pushing out the old fluid and introducing brand new fluid. Now that's what you want to do. This is the purpose. This will completely evacuate your system and get rid of the old fluid completely. This isn't a partial exchange. This isn't you know, a lot of what you see online is just, you know, replacing some of it and putting some of it back in, and that doesn't work. Okay, so now as soon as you start to see that happen, you know you've got a good connection here. You're going to keep your hoses out of the way of your belts down here. Keep all the belts clear of the moving parts. Your hoses clear of the belts. Now, what's going to happen next is we're going to start the motor and turn the wheels. Now what's going to happen is that's going to force the fluid to move back and forth through your rack and pinion, and given it's a hydraulic system and it runs in a circle, it will pull in the new fluid in your supply. It'll pull this fluid into the system and push your old fluid out of the system. Now you just let this run, and you just turn the wheel, go all the way to one side and then all the way to the other side, and it will push that fluid out of the system. And when it's done, this fluid in this line will run clear. Now you have 2 gallons because you're going to waste, well, you're not going to waste it, you're going to use the fluid to clean the system out, to flush it out. So what's going to happen is you have to do 2 things at once here. You have to watch your container that you're going to fill up with the old fluid, which is this here. I'll set this up here. probably not the best place to put it, but I'm trying to keep it all in the vicinity here so we can see what's going on. Actually, I'll set it up on here. Okay, now basically what you can see here, I have my supply is going through this hose and goes into the large line, which goes directly into the power steering pump. Then out of the small line, you can see here, you can see the old fluid coming out. Now at this point you're going to need a second person, because one person will need to watch the supply bottle and hold on to the evacuation line into your container. This needs to be done at the same time, obviously, because you're putting in new supply and removing the old supply. So once the motor starts and the pump starts running, this fluid is going to move. It goes in a continual circle, or a continuous circle through the system. So while this drains, you need to hold it up so you can feel the weight, and hold this with your other hand while it drains. Now when this starts to get empty, have your second person shut the engine off. That'll stop the pump. Then you can change the bottle with more fluid if you need to. And basically you just obviously unscrew the cap and put on the new one, and then continue the process until it's done. So I know I'm gonna have to change the bottle because this gallon here is not a full gallon. This is about 3/4 of a gallon that I had left over from yesterday from the first vehicle. So I know I will have to change that again in the middle of this process. So I'm going to get my helper and I'm going to start the motor and drain the system, and we will go from there. Okay, go ahead and start it. All right, shut it off. All right, give me 1 second. Just need to change the container here. Okay, go ahead and start it again. And do it. Okay, go to the right, quickly. Go to the left. Back to the right. Back again the other way. Okay, back to center. Good. Go ahead and shut it down. Okay. I have now, obviously, as you can tell, I flushed the system completely. You can see the supply line here, where it pulls into the system, is clear. And now, also, the evacuation or the return line is also clear. And yet, that's actually has fluid in it. That is clear fluid. So I have actually completely flushed the system of all of the old fluid. It now has brand new fluid, no debris, no junk, no gunk. It has been completely, quote unquote, flushed. It has been changed with new power steering fluid. Now my system is full of new fluid. Next we're going to move on to cleaning the reservoir and just flushing that out real quick and moving on. Now you can see that my storage container here is full. That's the old liquid. That is all old power steering fluid, which is
not very attractive at all. That's the old black, dark, burnt, 14-year-old power steering fluid. So next we will move on to cleaning the reservoir, reattaching and filling and getting rid of air and moving on. Okay, now the next step in this is to clean out the reservoir, which is this guy right here. But before we do that, we need to get to some of our power steering fluid. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take this line and drain as much of it as I can back into the bottle. Just bring this line down low. Now what I did, I just have it down here, just letting it run out back into the container and just creating a little bit of an airspace in the line. So you can see I got most of that fluid's out of the line now. You can see it where it stopped right there. The rest of it's empty. So I got that done. I can just put this up. As long as the end of your hose is up in the air, it's not gonna flood out. The system won't drain. And then again, just take a little bit of paper towel and plug the end. And that'll stop all your drippies. So you can see I just put a little piece of paper towel in there. And that'll stop it from any drips back into the motor. So now I've got some power steering fluid available. The other one I'm just going to leave the way it is. You can see it's still full of fluid. It's empty. You can see that it starts right there. You can see the line, and then so it's full of clean fluid. Same thing down here. You can see right there. Look at that glare off of there. See the line? You can see there's clean fluid. So I've got clean fluid through the whole system now, in and out. So I'm going to leave this the way it is for right now. Just set this to the side, just because I don't need to mess with this right now. What I want to do is get to cleaning out the reservoir. Get this camera situated here. So now this is all the old fluid that came out of the system. So obviously that's garbage. Let's get this here where I can work on it. And you can see what I'm doing. So that looks pretty good. Okay. So now you want to clean this out. The reservoir needs to be cleaned. It still has old fluid in there. And there, you're going to see, if you look inside the hole, inside there, you can see that there's a screen, there's a filter, and there's gunk and junk and everything that it filters out is still going to be in there. And you want to try and get as much of that out as possible. So the first thing that you want to do is, you have the two, see there's still more old fluid coming out of there. So what you want to do is just take your reservoir, open everything up, no paper towels in there at all on either end. You can see all the junk coming out of there. And then basically just pour some fluid into the reservoir and let it run out the holes. just clean fluid, pour it in, and it'll run out. You can see it running out there. You can see it running clear, so that's good. Let that run out completely on both sides, because there is an in and an out, and it filters the fluid as it goes through the system. Okay. So once you've done that, then put the lid back on, close it up, okay, and then in the big hole, use your finger over here and plug this one and hold it like this. So you can plug one end and hold it open, and then at the center, you're probably going to get messy, but you know, whatever, it's not the worst thing that's going to happen. So you're plugging the small hole with your thumb and hold the container, and then at the same time pour fluid into the large hole. It's going to get all over you, but if you hold it over your drip pan, it's fine. Put some fluid in there, shake it around, and just mix it up. And get all that crud and junk and whatnot worked loose. And then drain it out of the top. Just as best as you can. And just drain it out. And shake it. You can see it all coming out as you continue to shake it. And try and get as much as that, as much of the sediment and junk out of the canister as possible. Once that's done, go ahead and put the lid back on, close it up, grab your paper towels, and just wipe it down completely. Just totally wipe the whole thing down. So I will continue to do this. Okay, so now at this point, I've got the reservoir all cleaned up. I flushed it out as best as I could, inside and out, wiped it down. So that's all cleaned up. Set that aside. Now what you want to do now is remove the lines that you used to actually flush the system. So first, get some paper towels ready again to plug the holes. Just like before, so just take the paper towel and just wad it up. So you have a little point on there, and you can stick it in the line. Then also put some paper towels underneath the line, because you will get drippage again. Loosen your clamp. Now the first hose I'm doing is the one that's still in, I'm doing the feed, the one that's in the fill container. So I'm going to do this one first, just to get it out of the way. This camera set again. Okay. So have your plug ready, your paper towel plug. Loosen your clamp. As soon as you start to loosen this clamp, your fluid will start leaking out a little. It'll start leaking out immediately because you're breaking that seal. So get that done. As soon as you pull this apart, okay, pick this up in the air and get your plug in at the same time. So I'm holding this up plugged with my hand and get that paper towel in there to stop the fluid. Okay? Then what I'm going to do is pick this line up above the can, and you'll see the fluid you can see that running back into the container. You can see it there. See, it'll run back into the container. Okay. So now your line's clear. Once your line is clear, then you're all good with that. You can just set that down anywhere because there's no more fluid in that line, so it doesn't really matter where it goes. Just take the container and just set it on the ground. Okay. So I've got this plugged off. You can see all the fluid coming out of there. You can see how wet the paper towel is, because fluid will continue to run out of there. You can see that because your system is full of new fluid. So while you've got paper towels underneath it, you can pull your plug again and pull your clamp off, your hose clamp. You don't want to leave that on there. Set that up on your work base. Then plug it up again and slow down that leakage. Okay. Then you want to do the same thing with the next one. Now the only difference is with this one, because you have a dual barb on here, it's barbed on both ends, you can pull this line off and then just close it up in itself. So I'm going to get another piece of paper towel ready to go into this line, just like the other one. Get that ready. Have your line here, and then same thing, loosen this up. Now this one is tight, so you can take the hose clamp and put it on your plastic line. You can leave it on the plastic line, and then pull this off, and with your other hand, as soon as it comes out, of course, power steering fluid is going to make it hard to get a hold of. So you may need to grab your needle nose. If I could find them. Here they are. To get some grip. There it goes. Now it'll come loose. Now once you pull this, use your thumbs, plug the rubber hose and the clear vinyl hose. Plug both ends. Pick this up and let it run back down. Let your air bubbles come up. And it won't leak. Just hold this end up in the air and you're good. Just set that aside somewhere. You can see that fluid sitting right on top there. You can see how clear it is. See how clear it is? Then just plug this end, plug that up, then that's good just like that. Just for a couple of minutes. Okay. Next step is to put the reservoir back on. So, the first thing that needs to go in is the large end. Now you can see how far in this goes into the line. It's going to go to about there. Let's see if you can see that.
There it is. So you can see how far that goes in. So you can get your hose clamp close to where it needs to go. There. Okay. So we can bring this clamp closer to where we want it to actually get it attached. Okay. Then grab your reservoir, pull your paper towel out, push this back in. Get that seated all the way on there. Once that's seated, use your pliers, pull your clamp back over where it needs to be. Okay, so now you can see that's done. It's clamped on there again. A little too far forward. A little overzealous there. Bring that back a little bit. There we go. So now that's clamped on. Pick up any excess fluid you got down there on your air conditioner or whatever's below it, depending on your vehicle. Okay, so that's done. Then the next one is going to be the return line, the small one. But before we do that, let's put the bracket back on. Otherwise it's just going to be in the way. So get your screws back. Pick this guy up, drop him down there. Okay. Very, very greasy right now. I have no grip with anything. Okay, got that tightened down. That's good to go. Now we'll do the same thing with our return line. Just gonna get him loose. Push our line back on. Get our clamp up. Okay, so now we've got the feed to the pump on. Now I made a mistake and put on my return line on the bottom, the small hose first. You cannot do that first. If you do that first, you cannot get the reservoir back on the bracket because there's not enough play in these hoses to get it seated again. So make sure that you go ahead and do your large side first, or your feed line. Get that side on there. Then get your reservoir on your bracket and seated. There we go. Now again, that's just on this model. On the Ford, your vehicle may be different. So now that I've got it seated, then I can push the hose on and then bring up my clamp. Okay, now the clamp's on. Then I can put my other screws back in that are going to hold on, going to hold the reservoir in place. Okay, 1 and 2. This guy held on. Get him tightened back up. Okay. That's done. Get the other side on. Okay. Now he's all secure. Get some other junk out of the way. Give this one more final wipe down. Now your reservoir is completely empty. Your system is full because you've already flushed it and you have new fluid in it. So any little bit of residue that's left over is really not going to bother the system at all at this point. Because you'll have probably 1/100th of the junk in there that you had before. And take a narrow funnel and some fresh fluid. Go ahead and top off your reservoir. And just watch your line. You can see it coming up. Now, right now you can fill it a little over full because you are going to draw more fluid in because you have air in there right now. And it's going to draw fluid in to fill up that space. You're going to turn the vehicle back on. I'm going to actually clear all this off, my workspace here, where I have everything stationed, easy to reach on top of the motor. So I'm going to go ahead and clear all this off real quick. Let me put this camera back down for a moment. Pause it. Okay, I got my engine cleared off. At this point, you can leave the funnel in here if you want. It doesn't really matter. You're going to start the engine again. And just like when you turn the wheel, the steering wheel back and forth to drain the system or to circulate the system, to circulate the old fluid out and put the new fluid in, you're going to do the same thing to get the air out. So make sure you know your hoses are connected. You wipe down whatever you could. You've got your reservoir. It can be a little bit more than full. It's not a problem because, like I said, it's gonna pull more fluid in when you start it because there is air in the system, and you want to turn the steering wheel back and forth a few times, several times actually, and get the air out of the system. So obviously the only way to do that is to turn it on, run it, and turn the wheel. So I'm going to set the camera here Hopefully it stays put. It should be okay there. And I'm going to just leave that there. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and start the motor. You'll hear whining, some groaning for a minute or two probably. Depends on how quickly the system circulates the fluid and gets rid of the air. It'll do that faster the more you turn the wheel. It will draw the fluid through the system, through the rack and pinion, and clear that air out. And it'll get bubbly and foamy and all that kind of good stuff, and that's not a problem. Just let it work itself out and see if your fluid level drops, which it probably will. Right now, my fluid level, it's hard to see. Let's see. Now you can see it there. It's right in between the Ford symbol. You can see that dark line right there. That's where it's at now. So I'm going to go ahead and start the motor and turn the wheel a few times back and forth and just let it circulate and see how it does. And we'll go from there. Okay, I went ahead and I turned the wheel left to right, all the way left, all the way right, and I did that probably 4 times each way, and just let it run through and let the system go. Now you can see my fluid level right now. Before it was up here in the middle of the Ford symbol. It is now down to right near the max line, which is right where it should be, which is perfect. And that's where you want it to be, right at your max line. Now you can see inside, see all the little bubbles, foamy inside there? Not a problem, not an issue. That's just air that's getting pushed out of the system. That will go away. You can already see it going away. Just those bubbles. That's just air that's getting pushed out of the system. Not an issue. Will not bother the system. You could hear the system, how quiet it was, and just, you know, just running great. And that's just how you want it. You want to clean that out. That is a total flush. You know, like I said, there's lots and lots of videos on YouTube that talk about a flush or a fluid change, and none of them are this thorough that I've seen. None of them actually do a complete fluid change, and that's pretty much it. Please like, share, comment. I appreciate it, and we will see you next time. Have a good one.